All right, welcome everyone to Authenticity with Alicia, the podcast where we explore burnout, the pressures of society, and our quest for identity and authenticity. I'm Alicia, and today we are joined by Morgan Levy. She's a licensed psychologist that specializes in perfectionism and burnout, and also a host of a wonderful new podcast called That Nerd Thing, where it's all about fandoms and just all the fun nerd stuff you can think of. So, thank you so much for joining me today, Morgan.
Oh, thank you. I'm so sorry. I have like a cough drop in my mouth just so everybody knows. I have a little bit of a cough, just giving you a heads up, but I am so excited to be here. Um I'm so excited to talk with you. I know we've worked together for probably we've known each other over a year now, and
Yeah.
I've just always loved chatting with you and doing things with you. You're always wonderful and just so easy to talk to.
Stop, you're gonna make me cry. Yes, we're all about authenticity here. So yeah, we've got to start warm beverages, we've got cough
Yep.
drops. We are keeping it real here. But yeah, as Morgan said, I've gotten the pleasure of knowing her in our more like therapy-based circles. We've gotten to do some projects together. You've done amazing work. I'm just gonna like fangirl over you because you've inspired me in a lot of things that I have done. We've
Oh.
done like burnout work together, and I just love how like your brain works on a lot of these. Because burnout's kind of like sometimes a buzzword, and just I think you just have a wonderful lens. And I'm so excited for this new adventure of yours. At the time of our recording right now, it's a newer podcast, but this will come out, sometime later. And I know you're going to have wonderful guests that you are doing. So, can you tell me about how you've made that transition? Because you've done a lot of like therapreneur type things, and this new podcast isn't really therapy based. It's more about like just your interest and your passion. So, how did you make that transition?
Ooh. So I love all of the burnout and perfectionism stuff. But I think, I have a couple of courses, but I think I get my enjoyment there from the individual work.
Hmm.
And it was actually Tamara Howell who, I was talking about like, I want to do something nerdy. At first, I was thinking a nerd bundle, which I mean, I still haven't completely rolled out, but I just was like, trying to figure out how I can do more of that because that's really what I love.
Yeah.
Um, a few months ago, back in June, my mom actually died. And part of like that grieving process was doing more fun things for myself.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I kind of wanted to do fun things on like take these things that I'm doing in person and move it online. How can I do that? And I was thinking about like a nerd bundle and all of that stuff. And then Tamara, that's when she was like, you need to do a podcast. And she's been telling me that for a while, but
Really?
I haven't wanted to do a podcast
Yeah.
because like I don't want to do a podcast about perfectionism and burnout because I
Mm.
get my enjoyment there from meeting with individual
Hmm.
people. And I don't, the way that I would want to talk about it, I wouldn't be able to do that in a podcast setting. But
Yeah.
this felt so different. And so it just, the idea just sort of came from there.
I love it. So it really just sounded like a couple different puzzle pieces were kind of like lining up for this and
Hmm.
like just figuring out. I think something that both of our burnout work does is really tapping into like that joy piece. And it sounds like you were being really intentional with like, well, what is bringing me joy and how can I be intentional about the work that I'm doing and not just doing a podcast to do a podcast, but like saying this is something that I'm going to really enjoy doing if you're going to be spending doing a podcast takes some time out of our day. And
Oh,
so like
yes,
you
it
want to
does.
really like, do it well and do it right. And sounds like this is totally up your alley. And you've had some important, meaningful people to kind of help get you here.
Yes, definitely. And it's so funny. I was talking to my nieces and they're just like, you take everything and you have to make it a project. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I do. I took my love and I just had to make it a podcast. But I mean, it's not a business. I'm not making any money from it. I mean, obviously that would be wonderful in the future if I
Yeah.
could, make money from doing that. But that's not, it was really important for me that when I started doing this, that I would feel happy doing this, even if I never, ever, ever get a cent from it.
Yeah.
And right now, I love it. I do. So I've recorded 3 interviews. The second episode came out today, and I have so much fun. And then I also have so much fun on social media because now I can kind of do like the posts that I couldn't necessarily do as a therapist.
Yeah.
But I'm also always keeping in mind like my clients could potentially
Right.
see some of these things. So I'm always like, okay, I need to make sure whatever I do, like if they see, I'm okay with that. So
Oh, I love it. Yeah, definitely like getting to like just nerd out over it. So do you feel like you've gotten to like that embracing this part of your identity or any of those things, like has that impacted just like your mood or the work that you're doing?
Oh yes, I feel so much more fulfilled, and I, I'm I'm able to separate it more from therapy so that therapy feels much more meaningful to me.
Mm,
Because when I was doing focusing much more on the perfectionism and burnout stuff, that was also so similar to the things that were coming out in therapy that
mm,
it really just felt like an extension of it. Whereas this feels like it's a creatively fulfilling hobby now that
yeah.
I'm going for.
Oh, and I love what you said earlier of like that urge to make our hobbies into
Oh,
like a
gosh, I know.
business. And I like that is just so relatable. Like anytime I feel like recently, I think I said this on a different podcast I was on of like I started to crochet and instantly I'm like, I should create an Instagram page for this. And like no one cares, Alicia. Like no
Oh,
one but
people
your
would care.
that's true, but like I don't need that. I'm like I have an Instagram for my cat, my work. I don't need more Instagram. So, how did you kind of like slow down that urge to because like yeah, you could very easily like lean into this, make a brand, make a business, like do all the things. So how have you kind of chosen to maybe slow down and be really intentional about this?
I don't know if I've slowed down, to be honest. I
Totally
am
fair.
being very, but I am being very intentional that I'm okay not making money from it.
That's
That's like the
a good
piece that
first step.
yeah. But I mean, when it comes to the editing, I'm spending way too long editing. I don't, that's just, I think that's just me. There's no getting around it. I'm just going to be somebody who's very picky with that.
That's fair.
Um, but also it's really fun right now. And I'm not doing too great with setting time boundaries yet. Like I was up till like 1 a.m. last night finalizing the editing, but that
Yeah.
was because I procrastinated. But I need to get a little bit better with that so I don't burn out from it. But
Yeah.
it's so fun.
Good. And like, oh my gosh, totally understandable about like this is still a newer thing. So sometimes figuring out those boundaries, that's going to take some,
Hmm.
trial and error. And it sounds like right now you're having so much fun where it's like sometimes it's okay to push the boundaries a little bit. Like, is this going to sustain you if you're up till, 1 o'clock in the morning every time? Probably not. But right now it sounds like it's just like really fun and enjoyable. And you get to like really express yourself in a way that maybe you haven't gotten to do in like the more traditional therapy world.
For sure. I'm having a lot of fun on social media because I've
Oh,
always like been on TikTok and I was like, man, this stuff is so good. It's so clever. I wish I could post things, but I didn't really feel like I could. But now I feel like I can, and it's fun.
yes. Oh my gosh. So for folks, because it's a newer podcast, I mean, you got to go listen to it. I listened to the first episode, like we said, the time of this recording. The second one just came out, and I was busy with my boring work stuff
Oh
this morning, so I
yes.
haven't gotten to listen to it yet. But the first one, I like normally I'll with a podcast, I'll like try to multitask, and I couldn't. Like I was just like sitting in front, I was watching it on YouTube, and I'm like, I want to like soak all of this in. Like it was just so good, and so you got to go listen to them. But for folks, like that nerd thing. Like what is the podcast about? What does nerd mean? Like tell us all about that.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for that compliment, by the way. That means so much to me. So, my purpose in that nerd thing, the tagline is where, we uncover the magic that fandoms have on our lives. And every episode, I want to have somebody who, I mean, maybe they don't identify as a nerd, but in my definition of nerd is somebody who's just so passionate about something. And honestly, that's really it. They just have a
Yeah.
lot of passion. And every episode, I want to have somebody who's so passionate about something and we just talk about it. And I talk about my experiences with it, they talk about their experiences with it. And my hope is that listeners either see themselves in that person and that fandom, or they find a fandom that maybe they're interested in, or they just like hearing the conversation because it's we're not so focused on the fandom itself that people who aren't in that fandom won't necessarily understand it. It's more about how that fandom has shaped us.
Mm.
So I'm hoping people will either find a fandom that they want to join or they see themselves in that fandom. It's just it's all about connection and elevating nerd voices.
Oh, I love it. Oh, I
Yeah.
love it so much. And just like the fandom piece, like again, spoilers alert for folks who haven't watched the first one, but I loved how you and your guest got to really talk about like the community aspect of a fandom. And like I just know in a lot of like the therapy work that we do, like we're built for connection, we're built for attachment. And I know a lot of people that I work with in their, 20s, 30s, 40s, they're like, I just have a hard time, fitting in and, embracing these parts of myself and finding my people. And I feel like a fandom can be such like an empowering place that people can really like find their voices, find their people. And I just love that you're
Mhm.
creating that space for them.
Thank you. Yeah, that's my intention to create some sort of community.
Mm. Oh my gosh. So like, what are the things that you're currently nerding out over?
Ooh. So right now, well, I'm listening to Fantasy Fangirls. Nicole from Fantasy Fangirls was my first guest, and it, that's also a crazy story, but um like because she was in my bundle and then
Yeah.
I was on her podcast in I think it was August and we were just talking about our love for stories
Mm.
and then she started her podcast and I was just like whoa this is so good but yeah that was cool so I'm really liking that like I'm listening to that to hear all the theories for that the Empyrean
Yes.
series. I just started well, I just finished A Court of Thorns and Roses, so I'm gonna read the next few books in that series and then enter that universe and read all of those
Yes.
books.
I'm
So like
currently
that's
reading Silver Flames right now. So,
yeah, is that part of that like
it's
Avatar or
it's
okay.
like the fifth act physical book, like book four, because like that was the one that's
Okay.
like a 3.5. So, yeah, super fun.
Yeah. I'm loving it though.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you're gonna love it. Oh,
Ooh.
so fun. So yeah, so the Fantasy Fangirls podcast sounds like Court of Thorns and Roses series. You mentioned that you were watching the about the Empyrean series. So you read those books as well, right?
Yes, yeah. Hmm.
I'm wearing my
I know, I love
Iron Flame
it.
shirt in honor of Morgan today and
Oh, I
her
love
Nerd
that.
Things podcast. So
That that's one thing I also love about doing that podcast is I could kind of wear I have lots of shirts of different fandoms and I normally don't wear it to therapy just because it doesn't fit what I'm trying to do in
yeah.
therapy. But with this, I'm like, oh, I can wear all these things and put things in the background that relate to fandoms and have fun.
Yes. And really just like, so have you always embraced like the nerd aspect of your life, or is that something that like has been a journey for you? Or maybe evolved over time, maybe is a better way of phrasing it.
Definitely evolved over time. I mean, I've always embraced it in that I've, I started out with, well, there was actually Goosebumps series and all of that, but Harry Potter was the first real fandom
Yeah.
that I listened to MuggleCast. Andrew Sims from MuggleCast, he's like my idol. He's actually the interview that I have that really was released today. But I listened to MuggleCast for years. I went to Harry Potter conventions. I would say if it wasn't for that, I would not have embraced my nerdiness, but
Mm.
because I knew that there were other people like me, I did. And
Yeah.
I still was known as like the weird Harry Potter girl in school. And I had other friends who were into it as well, but I didn't really hide it because I just loved it so much.
Mm.
And, I would wear the shirts, I would read the books, I would talk about it. But
Yeah.
it definitely didn't, being a nerd didn't have the acceptance that it does these days. And that's why I'm also really excited to do the podcast to elevate those voices that maybe back then weren't elevated.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, have there been kind of this evolution of the word nerd even? Because, I feel like back in elementary school, kids are a-holes, and that's an insult if you, are into a certain book series or you get good grades and people are just trying to belittle you. And now I do feel like it's starting to be more embraced, and we've got these like Comic Cons and just like those variations
Hmm.
of them have like blown up and cosplay and I think maybe social media has given people an outlet and podcasts. And so, yeah, like how, I mean, it's in your experience, just how that word has even evolved.
Hmm. I also think the Harry Potter theme parks played a part in that
Mm.
because it I mean, from my own personal perspective, a lot of people are like, oh, like that's not cool. Harry Potter will be over soon. It's just a phase. And then when they had the theme parks, I just remember feeling so validated. Like, it's here to stay. People like this
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe also the Marvel movies too kind of helped people embrace that.
That's a good point. Cause yeah, I mean, and I think you're right. I think Harry Potter had a huge role in that of the theme parks and the movies and just like I think even in the podcast that in your episode one podcast of like everyone knows Harry Potter, pretty much
Hmm.
almost everyone has seen a movie of it or like no, you could recognize the characters. Like it's just a pivotal thing. But I think maybe those Marvel movies where it was became maybe cool to go to those movies, right? Like it was cool to like Iron Man. It was cool versus before nerd was maybe seen as like the uncool thing.
Hmm. Definitely. And, as you're saying that, I'm thinking whenever I've done workshops over the past year, I always introduce myself and I say I'm a therapist and I'm a proud nerd. So it's almost like that this has been brewing inside of me to just
Yes.
come out.
Yeah. Well, and I love what you're saying. Like, I'm sure like there's still lots of like ways to go with changing the narrative. And that's kind of one of my therapy lenses is always looking at those labels and the meanings behind them. And so while I think we have come a long way in embracing those nerd aspects, people are still a-holes sometimes. People still have
Hmm.
stigmas. People are still rude and have myths and misguided stereotypes. And so I love that you're creating this safe space to allow people to just like what they like, be who they are, and be that proud nerd.
Oh, thank you. One of After the first episode came out, I had so many people who I even haven't spoken to in years just reach out saying how much they love it and how they want to be on the podcast so that they could talk about the things that they love.
Yes.
Everyone just it's so they're excited to be able to talk about what they love.
Yeah. Do you feel like that's not really like common in our just like dynamics in life of like really being able to talk in like that passionate way that you're talking about in this nerd stuff?
I think so. And I think once you find your fandoms, then it's easier to do that. But I think when people feel kind of lost and they don't have that, then it's more difficult and they probably feel more isolated.
Yeah. I know for my own experience with like fandom stuff, I read the Empyrean series and after Iron Flame, I was the first of my friends to finish it. And I was like, I have so many thoughts. Like I don't I need to talk with someone about this. Like my brain was going a million miles an hour. And so I turned to, Reddit and Instagram and things like that. And then like when all my friends finally started to catch up, I was like, oh my gosh, it was like word vomiting. And so there really is something about like we have these thoughts, we have these feelings, we have these
Hmm.
ideas, and like we want to be able to put them out there with people who get it.
Hmm. Exactly. And I think I would never have thought to do anything like this if it wasn't for honestly MuggleCast. They've been around, I think, since 2005.
Wow.
And I think they really showed a lot of people in the online space, at least, that you can really dive into these stories and have
Ugh,
fun with them.
I love that. Has there been anything like or like surprising or difficult with this transition from like the therapy business type projects you've done to now this more like passion and like identity based project?
It's kind of surprising how much easier it feels for me to do things.
Fascinating. Why do you think that
Yeah,
is?
because I think it's just much more fun for me.
Mm,
It feels less academic.
yeah.
It feels more natural.
Yeah. And it sounds like, you sound like you've done your own work to like take maybe some of the pressure off, at least like for like the business side of it. So it's not like,
Oh
oh, I
yeah.
have to, market to specific people and I need to, meet these certain analytics so I can get money and my, bills are
Yeah.
required on this where you get to just be, it sounds. I mean, it's still work. I'm not going to minimize that. Like you're editing, you're doing things, you're marketing, you're still doing a lot, but it's for you. It sounds like it's much more fun and authentic.
Yes, and I think the way that the marketing for a podcast works feels better for me than
Mm.
marketing other sorts of things.
Yeah. What's like been different in that?
It maybe it's less strategic.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but it is strategic, but maybe it's just the strategy feels more in line with me. I've also been, being authentic here. I've been having some kind of just discomfort with the online coaching space and
Mm-hmm.
not knowing how it feels for me or how the stuff that I'm putting out, how like that feels for me, or if I would want to take what I was doing any further than what I was
Mm-hmm.
doing. And so I think this feels better for me too, because it feels like a different space.
Yeah. I like how you phrase that. Definitely sounds like that alignment. I mean, that's something that I know we also agree in a lot of our burnout stuff is like that value alignment being a huge piece of it. But yeah, I mean, there's wonderful therapists and coaches out there, and there's also just some not great ones. And so, like, I feel like the more that we're in this therapreneur side, we get to kind of see some of that, and it really makes us slow it down and think, like, how am I portraying myself? Am I in line with the type of person I want to be? Am I doing the things that feel good to me? And not to judge what other people are doing, if that's
Right.
what they're doing, that's fine. But that's kind of like the good and the bad thing of being our own bosses is we kind of have to like do what we feel like and not what other people are doing. It sounds like you've been doing a lot of reflection on that.
Yeah. And I think it's almost like what I was saying in the beginning, where the stuff that I like to do feels more meaningful when I'm working with people one on one. And I didn't really know if there was much more I can do with in that space without doing it, just the way that I work.
Right, right. Oh my gosh, well, I'm so glad like this project has just kind of lined up for you then, because it definitely sounds like it's helping with the passion and that piece of it, but also just like in line with the work stuff too, where then maybe you can keep having the energy to do that one-on-one work that you really get to thrive in and do the good work that you want to do.
Hmm.
Do you have any like tips for, that's an awful segue, but I'm just gonna be authentic
No,
there. Like forgot that I had another like really good question I wanted to ask you and I just glanced down
no,
at my notes.
that's okay.
Do you have tips for other people who are maybe starting to embrace their hobbies or interest?
It's a good question. I mean, honestly, what came to mind is just do it.
Yeah.
Like, don't like you could come up with so many reasons why you shouldn't do the thing, but just do it. I mean, I have no idea if this podcast will be successful, if people will like it, who will listen, but I'm going to do it anyways because I have
Mhm.
fun while I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
I don't
maybe
know if that's
focus.
really a tip, but
I think anything can be a tip. I think what I'm hearing like that in the tip is just like finding the things that are fun and then doing it regardless of if it's going to be successful or productive or these like big labels that I think
mm-hmm.
we put. It's just like do it. We don't have to be perfect at it. We don't have
Oh
to
yeah.
strive, but just do it. And maybe don't focus on these million list of reasons that come to our heads of why we maybe shouldn't and just try it.
Yeah. One of my favorite hobbies right now is going to book clubs. And of course, I joined too many book clubs and started my own because again, I just can't, take things easy. However,
Love it.
um, but I never before the book club meetings, they're in person. I never want to go. I
Yeah.
just I want to stay home. I don't want to go out,
Mm,
but I make myself go because I know every time I'm there, I love it and I feel
yeah.
so good afterwards.
Oh,
And I love meeting the people.
yeah.
But
So
I think
literally it is
also,
just doing it. Like,
yeah, yeah.
what were you gonna say? Sorry, I cut you off.
I know that's okay. Um, I don't know. I don't know.
If it's good, you can cut me off too.
Yeah.
No, the reason why I loved that question, because you work with a lot of folks who experience perfectionism, and I know in like my own journey of perfectionism, like hobbies were so intimidating for me because in my brain I had to be the best at something. And so if I start like I'm very into crafting, and so like I would got into embroidery and crochet and like it wouldn't look like the cute videos that I saw online. It wouldn't look like the cute finished projects on Pinterest that I was trying to do. And then, early in my journey, I would give up. I'd be like, oh, well, I'm not good at this. And then it's like, no, duh, you're not good at it. These people have been practicing for who knows how long. There's so many contextual factors that are different. Can I do this and just enjoy it? And when I got further
Hmm.
along in my perfectionism journey, yeah, my embroidery it's fine. I have fun doing it. I'm not going to go sell it at a craft store. My crocheting is a little rough, but I've only been doing it for about a month, but I have fun doing it. And so I think like I don't know if you had any tips for folks who have that I need to be the best at this thing and I need to learn all of the things about this series to consider myself eligible to be a part of this fandom or I need to like that black and
Oh,
white thinking of like if I'm
yes.
not the best at this then I don't fit in it. Like, do you have any tips for that?
I just totally, totally relate to that because there's so many things that I love, but I always feel like I'm not super knowledgeable or
Mm,
I'm not as critical of a thinker when it comes to theory. So I hold back. And that's also kind of that sort of stigma I wanted to break with this
Mm,
podcast. Like, you don't have to be the best fan to be a fan because it's not
yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
It's, and honestly, life is really short. And I experienced this loss and this grief. And I think that that also kind of influenced me not being such a perfectionist with these
Mm,
things because why? What's the point?
yeah.
Like, there's no such thing as perfect. Why try to reach that and then be so stressed and anxious? I mean, don't get me wrong, I still have my perfectionistic tendencies, especially with the podcast, but I'm not letting that stop me. I'm still doing it and being and feeling okay if it's when things aren't perfect.
Yeah. So like some like a really big like mind shift change, perspective change happened. And yeah, like we all have our perfectionist tendencies still. Again, we're not black and white, it's not gonna just like suddenly disappear. But it sounds like you're working towards that acceptance and just enjoying, it. And if it's not perfect, it's not perfect. And it keeps like I keep hearing you come back to like as long as I'm having fun, as long as I'm getting joy out of this, like that seems to be like your anchor in a lot of this.
It has to be. Otherwise, I'll start thinking of it like a business.
Mm.
And I don't want this to feel like a business where I have to stress over it.
Yeah. And then we get those insecurities and anxieties and the pressures and just like the spiral can happen. I also love what you said about creating a space for like all the fans so that you don't need
Mm-hmm.
to, you know, be able to go win every trivia contest, that, you don't need to know all the facts. You don't need to have read every single thing and be able to predict all things. It's just like, hey, do you enjoy this? This is a space for
Mm-hmm.
you. You can be anywhere on this continuum of a fan and you're going to be accepted here.
Exactly. I've read every Harry Potter book over 10 times. I stopped keeping track after that. And I still will not do Harry Potter trivia because I like can't if I don't get the question right, I'll just be like, "Oh no." I like it's that pressure. So
Yeah.
that's probably I probably should go do Harry Potter trivia to like get over that hurdle, but
Hardcore exposure
I
therapy.
know, right?
Oh, that's stressful. I just can't do trivia because I don't do well under stress. So like I could probably be like the most knowledgeable person on a specific topic and I'd be like, I don't know my name anymore. And so I'm good.
Oh,
I will support people from afar. Is there any other just like thoughts or things that you would like to share about your podcast or the nerd culture in general?
well, with my podcast, something that I'm trying to do is not just have people with large social media followings. I want to have people who are just passionate about something so they could share about it, like everyday people. And so I'm also trying to do that as well. So if anybody wants to listen and they have something that they think they would love to talk about, email me. I mean, because of my own like anxiety, I have some episodes banked up in case, something were to happen, but I'm open to people pitching themselves.
Yeah. No, I love it. Yeah, I'm gonna post Morgan's info so you can follow her on social. You definitely reach out to her because she's just a joy to work with, and the podcast is great. It is, yeah, like I said, I don't remember if I said this on Being Authentic. I don't remember if this was our pre-chat or now, but like I just couldn't even multitask. Like it was so good. And so go talk about the things that you're passionate about with her, and she's gonna just soak it up and give you that space.
That is such the biggest compliment. Just like not multitasking while listening. Like I mean, I multitask during almost everything.
Oh,
So
same.
that means so much. And one of my nieces, she's not into fantasy. She's not into that world at all. But she listened to that episode and was like, I kind of want to read the books now. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's the best compliment I could have received.
Yes. Oh my gosh, you're going to be changing so many lives with this. And I'm just so excited for this journey for you. So, folks watching, definitely go follow it. I always end with this question. So, Morgan, how have you been practicing being authentic recently?
Allowing myself to really embrace my passions and sharing it with the world, not just with the podcast, but in real life as well.
Yes. Oh, I love that so much. And definitely just like, I'm so glad that that journey of really embracing it has led to this incredible project. Hopefully, a lot of more joy in your life and getting to do things that like you said, we've got this limited time on earth. We've got limited hours in a day, being able to spend it doing things that fill our cup up. So I'm so glad that that is leading you to this, and I hope you get lots more of that. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day, folks. Definitely go follow Morgan's podcast. Again, I'm going to post all the links, so you definitely got to go connect with her. Thank you again, Morgan. This was so fun.
Thank you so much. I always love talking with you.
Awesome. All right, folks. Well, until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. And remember, the world needs the real you. So let's explore that authenticity together.